Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about the scariest horror movies this year. So what scares us all is different for each one of us. So in order to come up with a list of the 10 scariest horror movies this year, I decided to pick one for each one of the 10 most popular subgenres. And with that, let's get to the list!
Live or die, the choice is yours.
Saw X is a horror movie, directed and edited by Kevin Gruder. It was written by Peter Goldfinger and Josh Stolberg, and stars Tobin Bell, Shawnee Smith, and Sanov Makodi Lund. A sick and desperate John Kramer travels to Mexico for a risky and experimental medical procedure in hopes of a miracle cure for his cancer, only to discover the entire operation is a scam to defraud the most vulnerable.
Hello, everyone. It's time to play a game. You all pretended to cure me, but what I have planned for each of you is very real.
So this was one of the biggest surprises this year for me. I did not expect it to be as good as it is. I think it was a big surprise for most people, because as excited as I was for a new Saw movie, and as stoked as I was to hear they were bringing John Kramer back, I still did not expect it to be as good of a movie as it is. But the reason it's on this list in the Splatter Gore category is the gore in this movie is just incredible. The one scene that sticks out the most to me is when the girl saws her leg off. Just the way she reacts to it, the acting involved, as well as the practical effects there, it is just atrocious. It really makes your skin crawl. It's one of those few scenes, like Terrifier 2 from last year, that you just can't help but feel uncomfortable watching. Because you know it's not real, but there's that one little part of your primal brain that can't help but believe on some level what you're seeing. It's just a violent, gory movie in the most incredible way, but it's also just a really well done, very enjoyable, entertaining little movie. But I think if gore makes you uncomfortable and scares you, this one will definitely get to you. No One Will Save You is a sci-fi horror movie, written, directed, and produced by Brian Duffield. It stars Caitlin Dever as an exiled, anxiety-ridden homebody who must battle an alien that has found its way into her home. This was another big surprise this year because it just came out of nowhere. I didn't hear about this for the most part. I think I had seen a trailer a while back, but pretty quickly on I heard the buzz about it and I was like, hey, what is this all about? And I was just floored when I watched it because it's so well done and it's so unique and just really a lot of fun. But it's on this list because as far as monster creature kind of horror movies this year, this was the best and the most scary. They did such a great job of capturing this unique looking alien creature in all its different forms, and each one to me was scary in its own way. But there's so much about this movie that made it a good time, not just the alien creatures, but just the way the score and the soundtrack was handled. Because for a movie with pretty much no dialogue, it never felt boring, it never felt slow, it never felt like you were missing out on the dialogue because of all the action that was happening on screen. There was so much suspense, just the images you see on screen with these bone-chilling sounds. There were just so many terrifying, exciting moments in this film, and I think it absolutely is one of the best of the year. Candyland is a horror thriller, written and directed by John Schwab. It stars Owen Campbell, Olivia Liccardi, and Sam Quarton. a seemingly naive and devout young woman finds her way into the underground world of truck stop sex workers. But soon, things take a dark turn.
What are you doing back here? Are you okay?
Who's this? She's from that weirdo cult.
I think they're gonna leave for heaven before the rest of us.
So when I was putting this list together, one of the ones that jumped to me right away was the slasher category, because this movie is terrifying to me. As far as slasher movies go, I don't generally think of them as all that scary. But this one, especially in the end and the climax of this film, I thought get absolutely terrifying, because the way it builds suspense as well as things that you're just not expecting to happen, I think it's just a very surprisingly done movie. Because I think to make a really scary slasher movie, it's important to have characters you care about. So when they're killed off, you care. And I think this does as good of a job as any slasher movie I've seen in recent history. So if slasher movies are what gets your blood going, this is one you absolutely need to see.
The point of life. It isn't just one thing.
What is the point?
Rebirth is a psychological horror movie directed by Laura Moss in their directorial debut, from a screenplay by Moss and Brendan J. O'Brien. It stars Marin Ireland, Judy Reyes, and AJ Lister. A morgue technician reanimates the body of a little girl, but to keep her breathing, she will need to harvest biological materials from pregnant women.
This experiment is bigger than your daughter.
My daughter is not an experiment.
That's Muriel. She died 2 months ago.
This movie gets so disturbing and uncomfortable. There's so many scenes in it that just made me squirm in my seat. And we actually had a lot of really well done psychological horror movies this year. And when I was thinking about them all, it's hard for me to know what is scary, because a lot of stuff just doesn't really scare me anymore. But I did know the one that made me the most uncomfortable, and like I said, the one that made me squirm the most in my seat. And that was this, definitely, because just the bone-chilling body horror, the terrifying elements of seeing this little girl and the things that happened to her, as well as the things that happen to pregnant women in this film, they just really got under my skin and just made me absolutely uncomfortable. So all I know is, if psychological horror is what gets you scared, is what gets your blood to run cold, then this one will definitely do the trick.
Death is a disease. There's a cure.
The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster is a sci-fi horror movie, written and directed by Bomani J. Story in his directorial debut. It stars Leah DeLeon Hayes, Denzel Whitaker, and Chad Coleman. Vicaria is a brilliant teenager who believes that death is a disease that can be cured, and after the brutal murder of her brother, she embarks on a dangerous journey to bring him back to life.
Death is the disease that broke my family. I'm sick of seeing it.
So this is one of the few movies this year that got to me, because in a real world sense, this movie is terrifying. The way it shows how the true evil monsters in our world are just regular old men. It doesn't take a monster to be monstrous. And it just puts it in a really unique way, because this is a modern day reenactment, retelling of Frankenstein. And I think it just is beautifully done, because it looks unique and different and definitely modern, but it still at its core has that same age-old story in a lot of ways that Frankenstein had. But it also takes some interesting directions and really surprised me with some of the choices that it makes. And the way this version of Frankenstein looks, I found to be terrifying. The way they show it throughout this movie, where you just don't really get a good look at its face and it's mostly in the shadows. It just has this presence, but this movie has a lot of heart with fantastic characters. But at its core, it's definitely a horror movie with plenty of spine-tingling scenes. The Outwaters is a horror movie, written, directed, and starring Robbie Banfitch. It also stars Angela Bassett and Scott Schimmel. The story's about a group of 4 friends who encounter menacing phenomena while camping in a remote stretch of the Mojave Desert.
What's happening?
One of the things that actually gets to me, and I wouldn't say it necessarily scares me, but definitely gets to me, at least on some level, is the unknown and cosmic horror. Things that are just, impossible to explain. Those things that are just that great unknown. And I thought as far as that goes, this movie may not be for everyone, but I thought, especially at the end of this movie, that just that big question that it kind of presents you at the end of what did you just see? What did you just experience? This unknown entity, this unknown situation, I thought was really well done and really terrifying, to be honest. And I know this movie gets a lot of hate. A lot of people just don't get it, just don't enjoy it, did not connect to it on any level. And that's fair, that's fine. But the whole point of this list I'm trying to make here is just all the different ways that we all get scared, the things that scare us all, because what may scare me definitely does not scare you, and vice versa. Like, we're different people and have different life experiences that lead us to different types of fear. And for me, that unknown factor, the cosmic horror, the big question, that's what really gets me. And so the fact this movie is very unorthodox in the way that it's shot, and the fact that sound is such a huge, crucial part of it, the way it plays in your imagination, it struck a chord with me. And as far as movies this year, it was one of the more scary ones, at least for me personally, that came out this year. So for me, putting together a list like this, I had to include a cosmic horror one. And so the Outwaters definitely deserves a spot, in my opinion. Malum is an occult horror movie directed by Anthony DeBlasi. It's a reboot of his 2014 film, The Last Shift. It stars Jessica Sula, Eric Olson, and Cheney Morrow. A rookie police officer willingly takes the last shift at a newly decommissioned police station in an attempt to uncover the mysterious connection between her father's death and a vicious cult. This is one of the ones on here I could definitely see a lot of you finding very scary. Some of the imagery in this, like if satanic, occult, stuff really gets to you, makes you just feel absolutely terrified, this one's got it. There are some scenes in this that are just absolutely just horrendous, man. Just visually some of the most disturbing stuff you'll see. But it definitely is some of the more unique horror imagery from this year. I think just some of the way the costume designs are done, it's just really just a lot, it's really uncomfortable stuff. So I think if occult horror is what gives you nightmares, this one will definitely do the trick. Evil Dead Rise is a supernatural horror movie, written and directed by Lee Cronin. It stars Lily Sullivan, Alyssa Sutherland, and Morgan Davies. This is a twisted tale of 2 estranged sisters, whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle of survival, as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable.
It was the perfect day. And all I could think about was how much I wanted to cut you all open.
I had so much fun with this movie. It's gruesome, gory, just gooey, uncomfortable bloodiness that I just think is a blast. But it's chilling, man. There are some really horrific scenes in this movie. And the idea of family, and family being what comes and kills you, I think is terrifying. Just that concept alone. Because we've seen the Deadites in all these different scenarios where it's a girlfriend or whatever, but seeing it be your loved ones, I think is so much much more scary, something that I definitely think a lot of you will find uncomfortable. But this is also one that I think is scary in a fun way, like a haunted house kind of way. It's not necessarily a movie that's gonna stick with you long after. It's not that psychological kind of horror that does that. This is the kind that'll make you scream, make you jump out of your seat or whatever, but at the end of it all, you just had a blast, you just had fun, and can walk away from it. But I definitely think it's bone-chilling, definitely think it's terrifying in moments. I 100% think this movie has got a lot of scares in it, and absolutely had to be on this list.
Like you.
Talk to Me is an Australian supernatural horror movie, directed by Danny and Michael Philippou in their directorial debut, with a concept by Daley Pearson. It stars Sophie Wilde, Alexandra Jensen, and Miranda Otto. When a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces.
Put your hand on it. Now say, talk to me.
Wow, this movie I think a lot of you will consider to be the scariest movie this year. It was one of those that is uncomfortable from the jump. There are so many surprising scenes, things that definitely make you uncomfortable and squirming, just like the stuff where you're looking through your fingers kind of stuff. Yeah, this movie's got all of that, but it's really a unique story as well, with some enjoyable character development, people that you care about. Like, once again, like I talked about earlier, I think the scariest stuff is when you connect to a story, when there's characters that you care about, characters that you feel like you would possibly be friends with, or that they remind you of people because then you're just that much more attached to the story. And so when horrific things happen, you put yourself into that situation. And I think that this does that as well as any movie we saw this year. And I think as far as paranormal horror movies go, this is one of the scariest, well-made ones we've seen in quite a while. Because most of the time, that stuff just does not really get to me. It just feels like it's a bunch of retread things that we've seen a million times. But the way this is put together, the way this one's done, it feels fresh, original, and it just gives it that much more of a chilling, terrifying element to it. So this one is without a doubt my pick for paranormal horror of the year.
Los tiempos de la fe se terminan rápido.
When Evil Lurks is an Argentine horror movie. Written and directed by Demian Rugna, it stars Ezekiel Rodriguez, Louis Zembrowski, and Emilio Vadovic. In a remote village, two brothers find a demon-infected man. So they decide to get rid of the man, but merely succeed in helping him deliver the inferno.
Hay un embichado en el pueblo.
Estás asustando a mi familia.
¡Lo vi con mis propios ojos! ¡Estuve con él!
Okay, so this would be my ultimate pick. Out of all these movies, this is to me the most terrifying, the most scary, the most jaw-dropping, just incredibly horrific movie we've seen this year. This movie's incredible. A lot of what makes it so scary to me and terrifying is its uniqueness. It comes at it from a very different angle. It feels incredibly fresh and original in the way its storytelling happens, in the characters, and just the way everything happens in this film. But on top of that, the imagery, it's just gross, it's just uncomfortable, it's just harsh and things you just don't normally see. It's, once again, unique and creative in the way that it looks. But this movie's also vicious and does some things that are just taboo, things you just never see done in horror movies. And for me anyway, just connected and just made it really, really disturbing. And I've seen a lot of demonic possession kind of horror movies. We even had a big one in Exorcist Believer this year. I've seen a lot of them. And honestly, almost none of them have ever even come close to making me feel scared. But the way this puts it down, the way this pacing is done, the way it slowly builds on itself with this dread and uncomfortability, I think is just jaw-droppingly well done and absolutely the scariest demonic possession horror movie we had this year. Alright, so that's gonna do it for me today. I would love to hear in the comments what you thought the scariest movie this year was, as well as what is the subgenre that you think is the scariest. What's the one that gets under your skin and scares you the most? And also, if you enjoyed this, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ding that little bell, because that is the best way to keep track of this channel and when I post videos like this, and I post videos like this every single week. I also want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean everything to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or if you want to become a channel member and help support the channel that way, there's a button right down there that says join. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button, and remember guys, horror can be fun! And if you enjoyed this, click right here to see me recommend 10 horror movies right now over on Hulu. And I'll see you guys next time!